Hello, 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 everyone. Go. All right. Greetings, everyone. I am Nika Cherrelles, and this is the ItCast Real Talk on Sex. I want to thank you for joining us this week. This episode is brought to you by the Nikita Sex Toy, the first sex toy designed for adventure, play, and social change in mind. You can learn more about the Nikita Sex Toy at triggerhappytoy.com. So, we have been talking this month about privilege, and we are going to continue that theme. But a few of our listeners shared that our conversation last week was not quite sexy enough for you. So, taking in all that information, we have decided this week to do the ItCast Real Talk on the privilege of dating. This week, this week our guest has decided to remain anonymous, and we are committed at the ItCast in creating safe space on the airwaves. So due to the sensitive nature of our conversations and our topics, we're going to refer to him as John throughout this conversation. And John, I want to welcome you into the ItCast booth. Please take a minute to tell us a bit about yourself and who you are.
What's up? What's up, everyone? Hey, thank you so much, Nika, for having me. I'm super pumped. So I mean, not that I don't want to be anonymous because I'm not proud of who I am or I'm not living authentically in my real self, but I think, I want the story to be about the experience that a lot of people have in the South Asian community. And so it's not about who I am or my name or my specific experience, although I think sharing experiences is incredibly uplifting for everyone in the community. But I figured I don't want attention on that. I want attention on, what we can do moving forward. And yeah, I mean, I've definitely had a lot of pain and struggle and trauma in my life, and I'm happy to talk about it. But I want the world to know that we all go through that, and we can learn from each other, and it just doesn't really matter who that person is. It's they're a human just like the rest of us, and so but I'm excited. Yeah. So I guess just about me, I mean, I am part of the South Asian LGBT community. I always joke that, it's funny because I think there's a lot of challenges in being gay and from the South Asian community. But if you think about it, it's a numbers thing, right? Like homosexuality does not over index in any race, any country. So it's pretty much just as straight up, I've heard like 10% of the population is gay. So if you think about the countries that are most populated, right, there's China and there's India. So there's a lot of gay guys in India. You know what I mean? So, I'm in very, very good company, whether the country wants to admit it or not. There's a lot of gay guys in your country. So I think it's important to realize that and just not think that any one particular country or people or religion has any less or more. Being gay is a human experience. And it's just a certain percentage of the population. And so where there's a lot of humans, there's gonna be a lot of gay humans. And that's just really important to kind of just get, take that in. That's very objective. So, but I was born here in the US. I do thank my lucky stars that, I did have the chance to grow up in a country that's, a little bit more, is more accepting. I think it would, who knows what my life would have been like if I was in the, grew up in India. And I feel for the people that are still stuck in some of those kind of like really traditional communities and villages where they don't have that support. But I was born and raised in Chicago, and was from a family that was very kind of typical immigrant. The kind of East meets West. I mean, my parents were super strict, and really wanted the best for me and my sibling, and just we worked hard, we studied hard, we achieved, and it's been a good life. But obviously things started coming up when I realized that I wasn't quote unquote normal. So that's really where the story begins, I think, for us. So I'll pause there. Is that a good intro, or you want me to go into? Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. You really did bring some really great conversation to the surface, just looking at like, what is it that we consider to be normal, and the idea that normalizing, like, that's where we find a lot of our shame. The other thing that I loved in what you shared is that it's a numbers game. Like anyone out there who thinks they don't know someone who's a part of this community, or anyone out there who thinks that they're completely alone, like it's a numbers game. And there are so many people out there who identify as queer, LGBTQ, all across the world. So just really getting that, like, we exist, and in some places we still have to hide who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
it's and no amount of money, no amount of, you know, there's nothing saves anyone from having struggles. It doesn't matter how much, what silver spoon you're born with or not. When you have to start to reconcile with who you are as a person and what you really want in life, and how that might be at odds with what your parents have told you, or community, or just even what you think is right. No amount of money, no amount of success, no amount of resources will necessarily save you from that. And I think that's actually interesting, because even with the resources, I had resources at my disposal. I didn't think to take them because I didn't know how to access them. Right. So that's even the cruelty as well. I had resources in the form of therapy I could go to, or mental health professionals. But again, there was a block because in our community, we really look down on that. We can talk about that in a bit more detail, because that's kind of an important part of my story. But our the community of Indian people doesn't necessarily believe that at Indian therapy is, or sorry, therapy is something that we need to do. Like, we're too smart, we're too educated, we're too developed as people to admit that we have weaknesses, or we have issues or demons. And so yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're born. We all have stuff to move through.
yeah.
So yeah.
That's huge, and it's similar in the Black community, not buying into therapy or mental health. Um, it's something that I can see us shifting quite a bit, but it's still one of those very taboo conversations. Like for us, it's like, don't admit that something is wrong with you, because it's already hard enough to be Black in America.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I can definitely relate to that, like not getting the resources, tapping into the things that we need. Yeah, and that's huge. That's a huge element of the conversation. I definitely believe in mental health and all of the therapies. Please get them, people. I even heard there's a lot of suicides happening lately in the United States from people who don't get that it's like their family like knew that they were dealing with being a part of the LGBT community and not fitting in, and they actually just decided to commit suicide because they didn't think anybody got them. So I have to say that being born in the United States, I take dating for granted. I take it for granted. Like it's such a privilege to be able to go out and date who I want, see who I want, not worry about what other people are thinking, knowing that who knows if they're thinking something or not, it's not relevant. But hearing your story and all the things that you've gone through, dealing with your family and growing up, how much I've taken for granted the fact that my family's been very accepting, and like and as much as I thought, oh, they're not going to be okay with this, or it's not going to be cool, um it's a part of the American culture at this point that like they didn't give me as much slack as I thought, even though I grew up, mostly pretty religiously in the Midwest, in places where like this is still not okay on the surface. It's becoming more okay underneath. So share a bit about like,
Yeah.
your come from.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, so I think, for me, it's kind of like you start to think about what you find attractive, and you start to think about, um, what visuals you like to look at. I mean, I remember the first, incident where I was like, okay, well, definitely something's different is I was shopping with my mom, at Target or something, or Walmart. And, she put, we were shopping for my dad too. And, cause just like you're buying all the household stuff, and she had to buy some underwear for my dad. And I was sitting in the cart, and she gave me the underwear packet, the Fruit of the Loom underwear brand. They used to have like this nice torso on the label, just kind of like a nice model torso that would show off the underwear. And I just kind of looked at it and was like, it felt comfortable. It felt like home, and when I was 6, I mean, what do I know? I just kind of like remember that. And it's just, I remember that, very vividly. And then I remember having a lot of dreams about, men, just a lot of, I'd be, at the pool, and I just would constantly be, trying to get closer to men and sleep on them and lean, not even sexual stuff. Cause I mean, I was still growing up. I was a teenager, but like, I felt very comfortable laying on a guy's chest, or I just had, and I'd wake up and be like, wow, like I always just kind of keep going to that, that space. So your body starts to, kind of give you clues and tell you what you're interested in, and what you're developing as the hormones and as the systems start to fire up. It's like you start to kind of, begin to develop those feelings. So, that was kind of the first inklings, but, I didn't really associate that with being gay. I just assumed that was a phase, or I just assumed that was, something that a lot of people just, was like, people like appreciate, the male form, and it's beautiful and it's muscular and whatever. And, it still means I could, get married to a girl. And it just was something I thought was good. Or maybe I was just trying to like look like them, and, be fit and be athletic. But, so I basically, kind of had those moments, and, I basically went through college and was kind of really focused on parties and socializing and drinking. I didn't do any of that, in high school, because again, my parents ran a tight ship, and it was all about, education and studies and A+ and being valedictorian and all that stuff. I was off by about 3 people. I was like number 4 out of a class of 700. So I'm pretty proud of that. But, I cranked it out, and then I came to college and discovered alcohol and discovered friends and discovered parties. And I think that was enough of a novelty, or enough of a new, unique experience, that I didn't really worry about, all my friends were hooking up obviously around me, because it's what you do in college. And a lot of people kind of have their sexual awakening then and discover, obviously the opportunity is very much there. You have access to a lot of kids that are all living together in the dorms. And, of course I noticed that. And a lot of people asked me like, why I wouldn't engage with the females. And I had a lot of female friends, because, gay guys typically have kind of a whole, entourage of women that they hang out with, because I think women generally are very comfortable around gay men. And we obviously all have a lot in common in that we all love dick. So, it's obviously not surprising that we're all friends. But, basically, college kind of came and went. And then it was really after I started, I graduated, and I was building my life like any, 24, 25-year-old, trying to figure out what was next and what's my life going to look like. And that's where like the difficulty started coming, right? And the pain, and the recognizing that I'm different, and craving the companionship of a male, which I thought initially was just kind of like more like a physical thing. And now I realized like, yeah, I'm gay, and that's where all the conflict started coming, because I thought about the messaging, not just like of, the Indian community, but even the community at large. And, we've made huge strides as a country. I mean, we're so accepting, and to see like same-sex marriages get approved, and, all these role models that are gay and open in the celebrity world and other professions. And, but it was tough. There was a lot of things even that my parents might have said, and I don't blame them, because, everyone comes from somewhere, and no one's perfect, and no one knows how to raise a person, right? I mean, you there's no dress rehearsal. You do it as you're faking it as you're doing it. Like, I mean, like, or you're learning to do. There's legit, like, not, I mean, there are obviously millions of books, and you can theorize about it, but until the baby's in your hand, and then you're just kind of going it. Like, I mean, we're all living life with no specific, rule book or guide, And so anyways, I don't blame them, but, obviously what happens. And, and the important thing is just to start to, to deal with it and acknowledge it. So, it was a really dark time. It was definitely the dark ages for me. And I built this mental disorder. It's called body dysmorphic disorder. And, I had developed that because I started really getting obsessed with my skin, and thinking that my skin was all messed up. And this is the same disorder family that, anorexia and bulimia belong to. So it's this idea um, that you have created or manifested a physiological issue, whether it be like you think you're too fat, or, for me, it was the skin. I thought my facial hair was all messed up. And I could not let go of that. I just manifested this issue in my head, and saw like so many dermatologists, because I was just convinced that it was external. It was my skin. I never in my head made the connection that really this was not real. And it was just the fact that I hadn't accepted who I was. I didn't love myself. I had that internalized homophobia. And so I had to find something to point that towards. I had to find an external, issue, because there was nothing, but in my head there was. So, and it took seeing a doctor. So he was a therapist, after seeing a bunch of dermatologists. I think the last one was like, finally was like, you've got a mental issue. This is not a skin thing, because I'm a good dermatologist. I know what I'm doing. I don't see anything, and you can say it's an issue, but I can't diagnose something if I don't see it. So I said, well, what the hell? I, at this point, tried to kill myself a few times, because just, when you're in that depression, when you're in that darkness, you don't, and you just, at this point, I was just so convinced that my skin was messed up and nothing would work. I mean, I tried every lotion and pill and medication and treatment. And of course, nothing was going to happen, because it was all internal. So you just kind of give up, and you're just like, I don't see a way out. But luckily I saw a therapist, and he, I think, had diagnosed me right away. He kind of knew in his head, probably, okay, this guy's obviously got some issues internally, because he's talking about his skin, and there's nothing there. But he obviously knows that I can't, he can't just tell me that, because I have to discover it myself. I have to realize it myself. That's the thing, is once you see an issue with someone, like, you can't tell them, because it only works if they discover it for themselves. That's how you actually, help someone, is just kind of walk them through their own path. So he basically kind of got me to talk about myself, and he was like, do you have a girlfriend? I said no. He's like, do you have a boyfriend? And that was the first time actually anyone in my life, had brought that up, because he probably knew, he was kind of treading the waters. He knew exactly where he had to get me, so that, but he knew what he was up against, because he knew that I had this kind of hatred. So he knew that I was going to be defensive and resist, because he knew where my acceptance was at that point. Right. He knew that there was this wall. And so he asked me very gingerly, like, well, do you have a boyfriend? And I kind of was like, no, like, what are you talking about? Because, obviously I didn't want anyone to know what was happening, and the secrets, and the fact that I was watching, gay porn and what have you. And so he was just like, well, that's cool. Don't worry. Like, I got it. That's good to know. But he was like, I recommend you just go talk to someone, find someone in your life that, that doesn't know anyone in your family, can't tie you back to your friends. I mean, just someone who's kind of on the periphery and can just listen to whatever you're dealing with, whatever you're doing, whatever, just share. And so I was like, well, sure. I mean, I had no idea what he was talking about, but I figured, okay, well, maybe I just got to talk about, my skin issue, and maybe other things will come up, and we'll be good to go. So anyways, I asked my colleague at work, who was a dear friend of mine, very dear friend. And we go to dinner, and, I'm about to tell her, okay, well, she should know that I do watch gay porn, and I think dudes are hot. And obviously that was stuff I clearly wanted to tell people, and I was itching just to be myself and be authentic, but had all these blocks and barriers. So, we both got really drunk, and finally I just got the courage, or the nerve to be like, hey, I think dudes are hot. And I think that's what I said. And she was just like, okay. Like, it was the most, like, blase, okay, who cares? Like, the most news that she could have heard, because she was like, whatever. And just that acceptance, and the reaction she had, just completely made me realize that there was nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong. This is just who I am. And, we spent the rest of the night checking out guys, and looking at, every few minutes I'd be like, is that okay? And she was like, yeah, I mean, like, whatever, like, this is your life, like, do what you got to do. And I woke up the next morning, and because that was probably the first night where I had literally just shared all this stuff that I think guys are hot, and, everything. And that was it. That was all it was. And the next morning I woke up, and I ran to the mirror, and, like, legit, I didn't have any issues with my skin. Like, it completely disappeared. I woke up a new person. I mean, and I can't tell you, I mean, if I could bottle up that feeling, that morning. I mean, I'll never forget. I mean, I was hungover as anything, because obviously I got drunk, but I woke up that next morning, I went to the mirror, and I saw myself, because for the first time in my life, I had been myself with a friend about a part of my life that I had just never, ever shared with anyone. And she just accepted me 100% and just made it such a non-issue, and just was so blasé about it, because it's not an issue. It's as if it's just as significant as the fact that I have black hair. I mean, it's just a part of me, but it isn't defining me. And obviously, like, it is a big part of me, and I have to navigate experiences because of it. But again, it's not such a big thing. And so I called the therapist the next morning, and I was crying, because I'm like, there's not enough money in the world I can give you. You saved me. I mean, because I feel great. I don't have anything going on. And he was like, I mean, he was just like, well, it's all in a day's work. There's really, you know, that's what we do, and he was like, I hate to break this to you. This is like, you're a textbook. You're not very special. There's a lot of guys that have the same exact issue. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, and then that began a journey, of acceptance and joining the community, and embracing who I was, and going to gay bars and going to gay clubs, and exploring the sexual side of things, and just having the ability to, you know be myself, be 100% authentically, genuinely who I was meant to be, nothing else. And that's just the best gift. That's the best thing that you could ever do for yourself. And yeah.
I love that. I love the fact that your friend normalized it for you. And that's the space that we need to be in. I'd love to hear you share just a little bit more about like the internalized homophobia, because that's the killer. Like that's the
Yeah.
part that actually takes us out of being able to be ourselves, be with the people that we love and care about. And like that's where the shame comes from. So could you share just a little bit
Yeah.
more about like that, what that
Yeah.
is?
I mean, it's a lot of things. I mean, and it's all unconscious, right? It's all things that you pick up, and it's even stuff that people don't intend to leave with you. I mean, just it's amazing how our minds are like, you have no idea what you're reacting to, what you're registering, what you're taking in. And then, even if I don't make a point at the time where I hear it to do anything about it or get defensive. So for example, even like something as simple as, growing, when I was my first job out of college, um, this guy, because I wasn't totally out, but this guy came to me, and he was like, because I think at a certain point, people, and I don't, again, we can get into like, you know, and this I think also is some homophobia in the community, is like this idea of like, oh, like, you don't seem gay. Like, I've heard that phrase, and like, what a horrible phrase, right? It's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, what does that mean? You don't seem gay? Like, obviously referencing the fact that, uh, kind of the stereotypical like feminine voice, and the kind of like the dainty whatever, and that's just that is just one expression of it, but doesn't mean it's
Period.
everything. And yeah, and look, there's some straight guys I've met that they're not necessarily like coming back from branding cattle. They're not like, they're not GI Joe by any means. And I've seen them wear an apron or two, a time or two. So let's not pretend like, there's just no black or white. There's every shade of gray on every side.
Yeah. And that's so important, to actually get that gender is not the paradigms in which we've created it to be. It's like women aren't supposed to be this way and men aren't supposed to be that way. And our gender has nothing to do with what we like sexually. Like those are two completely different worlds. And we get caught up. I think that's where a lot of gender-based violence comes from, a lot of aggression. Like that male aggression where it's like you have to be such a man. And it's like, well, actually you just have to be yourself. You just have to be yourself.
You have to be yourself, and yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I remember like, you know, again, I don't display the typical characteristics, but what does that even mean? I hate that. But there'd be a couple of times like where people would be like, hey, like, I'm cool with the whole gay thing. Like, it was just this idea of like needing to clarify that like they don't have an issue with it. And like people don't realize like that is so rude and insensitive, because it's you're saying like, well, I'm okay with it, it's just like, I don't have to tell someone like, well, hey, I'm cool with it that you're straight. Like, where is the double standard where you have to tell me like, hey, I'm okay, I'm giving you permission to live your life, but I can't give you, I'm not giving you permission to live your life. Like, what does that even mean? I hated that. I remember very vividly a couple coworkers, like, we be working late and they just like, we just be talking, and and look, maybe it was just they just wanted to know who I was, and they probably just wanted me to just share like, what I really was going through, and maybe they just cared about me, and they just wanted to hear whatever I was going, and they just didn't know how to make it a safe space. But it doesn't matter, because if someone's not ready to share that side of them, and you know first of all, you should never suspect or guess or whatever, but then to say like, hey, I'm cool with it. Okay, well, okay, what does that mean? Like, what is there to be cool with? Are you implying that some people aren't? Like, that kind of just that type of, well, you're this and I'm like, it's like it's moving you out, it's putting you outside of society. You know what I mean? Like, it's basically saying like, well, you're living this alternative lifestyle, and you're not with us, but I'm not judging you. No, we're who's to judge anyone?
Yeah.
So
No.
I mean, that's and it's almost like those microaggressions. That's the stuff that almost is worse than any kind of full on bullying or attacks. And I've never been attacked. I've never been bullied. Oh, I've been bullied, growing up, but that's obviously like, that's because I probably had like a mustache, when I was like, 7 years old, and grew my facial hair faster than most people, and they thought it, whatever. I mean, just like, or like I tucked in my shirt inside my pants because that's what some Indian kids did, and my parents didn't know any better. So yeah, I mean, I got bullied, but the gay thing never. I was never attacked, or but it was those things. It was just the little comments that build up, and again, you just, when you hear it, you don't say anything, or you just kind of, I mean, at that point I probably just was like, yeah, no, that's cool, I'm not gay. Like, I probably denied it again, but then you remember that, and it gets planted somewhere in your subconscious, and then it's always going to come up.
Oh, yes. That's fantastic. I mean, I love that you pointed to the whole microaggressive aspect of it, because I think that culturally we're just getting present as a whole to what microaggressions are, what they look like, and how they exist. And like you said, like, it's the little seeds, like they get in there and then they'll grow and they'll fester. And then later on, it's an opportunity to use it, as a bit of shame, a way to like beat ourselves, or not, not allow ourselves to actually fit into the conversation. Um, I also love what you said, your doctor said about it being like textbook. Like, that is the kind of thing where I wish people got how common this is, so that
Yeah.
it's not such a shock
Yeah.
in the
No,
world.
I mean, these are things that people study, because it just happens so much. And this is the same experience that everyone, because we're all products of this, like the same society, the same messaging, the same trauma. I mean, and it's kind of, we all get in different flavors. We might, it just it's the manifestation is different, but like at the crux, it's still about self-love.
Absolutely.
And
Um,
that's just, yeah.
you brought up one thing there at the end about like being outside of society, especially when it comes to like, like, oh, it's cool that you're gay, like, it's okay that you're that way. I'm not that way, but you can be that way if you want to. Can you talk a bit about like what it's like, witnessing people who like if you just fit into what the normal cookie cutter
Yeah.
society stereotypes look like, the difference that life can be. So
Yeah. Well, that's what's coming up for me right now, especially. And it's like, the pandemic, and I'm trying to create a life that I love, a life that I'm I'm proud of, that I'm happy with, that I feel myself, I'm energized, I'm self-expressed, it's authentic, and it's like, because, it's not the typical life. It's just, you have to like work that much hard to figure out like, well, is this what I want? Is this what I think society wants? Like, what do I really want? And so it's right now, like, I'm single, and, I think I'm trying to understand how to navigate dating. And, I mean, I think, no one knows how to, like, it's not like there's like anyone knows how to, like, no one knows how to fall in love. No one knows how to like approach relationships. You just do it. And you meet people, and people come and go into your life, and some of them stay, some of them leave, and some, stay longer, some leave faster. Like, it's just, I mean, we're all literally just, trying it every day. But when you have a bunch of people trying to figure it out, if you have a bunch of people that are kind of living, what has been passed down, I mean, if there's a template that they can use, that kind of helps them, understand what they want. And, there's like women that need the children, right? And so that can kind of be like something that helps, drive relationships. Not to say that, that's how you should, enter relationships. I mean, it's not like, procreation is the only reason, but like, I guess my point is just like, I feel like gay men, we don't have, I don't want to say we don't have a reason to be together. I mean, of course, like everyone wants companionship, but I feel like there's just a little bit more flexibility and freedom. And again, this isn't to say that straight people can't have every iteration of their own experience. I mean, that is another way to assume that, people have to have kids, or it has to be, children. Like, that's kind of the same thing, right? I feel for the women who, who don't want to have kids, or don't want to be mothers, and how they feel like they're outside of society. It's the same thing. I mean, I was talking to one of my friends who said, it's amazing the experience that, like, so they've consciously decided to not have kids. And he says that when he tells his buddies, hey, we've decided not to have kids, they high five him and say, oh man, like, that's awesome. Like, how'd you get out of that one? Like, you're so lucky. Whereas with the woman, when the woman tells her friends, hey, we've decided to have kids, not have kids, it's kind of like, oh, well, are you sure? Like, are you okay? Like, have you thought about, like, it's just kind of, again, that stereotype.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's the same kind of thing, right? Which is, it must be so painful. But anyways, my point is, so as much as there is no rhyme or, like, there's no rule of how you do it in the straight world, I do think, because marriage and those things are social constructs that have been passed on for so long, and there are some people that want to get married and are striving for that. I just don't know what if there's a comparable metric for gay men. I mean, there are gay men who want to get married and have unions, and do have kids, but, like, again, because it's just, there's not as much of that, I think. Or maybe there's just harder to find, or to kind of replicate, or look at a role model of someone who's lived, the life that I want to live. I do feel like a bit of, like, I'm kind of, like, in the dark, with, like, no headlight.
Yeah. Oh, I get that. I love that. It's it does suck to have this like standard stereotypical, this is the way that life is supposed to be, like nuclear family, husband, wife, 2.5 kids. And being being where we are in life, it's like, what are the templates, what are the healthy templates, what are the ways in which we can actually begin to build and set examples for future generations of people within the community who also need these conversations. So I love that. That's really powerful. All right, we did go just a touch over, but we are about to go ahead and close the show. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listening audience before we wrap up?
Just, love yourselves, know you're not alone, share, be vulnerable, and yeah, know that it's all trial and error, and like, legit, there's not a single person who knows exactly what they're doing. There's not a legit person who knows exactly what they're doing. And to think, just for them to say, is just, foolishness. So that's about it. But this has been great, Nika. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm just going to put a little tag on that. Share with someone who is no stakes, like not not the family, the close friends, but someone who just, you can get that information out there and eliminate the shame. I think that's fantastic advice. And share with someone this Valentine's Day. Love yourself, because that's how you get to love everyone and really even have the capacity to love anyone. So thank you for joining us all today. Just so you know, next week I'm going to be speaking on the Kink panel workshop with kink.com. The workshop is called Kink On and Off the Page. You can find information about that on Eventbrite. And also, this episode was brought to you by the Nikita Sex Toy, designed for adventure, play, and social change in mind. You can learn more about that at triggerhappytoy.com. That's triggerhappytoy.com. And you can learn more about the ItCast and our work at NikaCherrelles.com. That's NikaCherrelles.com. Thank you so much for joining us on the ItCast Live, and we will see you again next week.